Hi, everyone. Good morning, and thank you for joining our webinar on streamlining your stormwater program and MS4 compliance work with ArcGIS and 2NFORM. Wilson, are you there?
I'm here, Chris.
Fantastic. Go ahead and introduce yourself.
My name is Wilson. I'm a solution engineer here at 2NDNATURE. I've been working in stormwater for 5 years. And before this, I was a field inspector doing industrial and commercial inspections. Originally from Charlotte, North Carolina, I now live in Northern Virginia.
Outstanding. Hi, my name is Chris Capelli, and I'm president of 2NDNATURE. Before joining 2NDNATURE last year, I worked at Esri for 30 years. I'm originally from the East Coast, outside of Philadelphia. I now live in Ventura, California. So I think the first thing we wanted to do for you all is just introduce you to our offering, our product called 2NFORM. It's a complete stormwater information management system that's built with and integrates with ArcGIS. Our view, probably like yours, was that there was a gap in information management in the stormwater industry, and that's what we've focused our energies on trying to solve and address. It's a 100% cloud-based solution that integrates both with ArcGIS Online and ArcGIS Enterprise. One of our key missions was bringing about this notion of having data and efforts of a program brought together so that people could collaborate better and more efficiently. We thought probably the best way to start out this webinar was to go right in and show you a few demonstrations. Wilson, how about that demonstration?
Yeah, thanks, Chris. So the first thing that we're going to be looking at today is one of the ways that 2NFORM is helping some of our customers with our summary rollups. And so what we're able to do in 2NFORM is the platform takes all of your efforts throughout the year and rolls them up into two different views. We have a progress map, which gives you basically just a map of your progress. But this summary view gives you two different key pieces of information. Our clients are using this first paragraph in an effort with their public education and outreach portion to just give the public an idea of what the value of their catch basin cleaning effort is. And the second paragraph here, our current clients are using for their annual reporting, usually in their summary statistics section of their report. I've gone online and actually found an annual reporting document that actually asks for a summary of results for catch basin structures throughout the year. So what I can do is take a copy of this automatic summary that's generated and paste it directly in this annual report. We can automatically present that for our annual report at the end of the year. So pretty easy, click of a button, and you get your annual report summaries submitted. What we have on the screen now is a map of the MS4 boundary. And this MS4 boundary has some subcatchments inside of that. These subcatchments are color-coded based on runoff rate, which is in feet per year, and the darker areas have more runoff and have the highest opportunity for mitigation of flooding. If we zoom in, we can click on a particular subdrainage to get more detailed information, such as baseline runoff volume, so how much actual water is coming off the surface, as well as current runoff volume, so we can take the assets that are on the landscape and generate how much reductions are a result of our stormwater capture efforts. By zooming in a little further, we can see that this is a residential area, which will be impacted if there are any floods in this area. And we can turn on different layers like our storm drain layer and our outfalls layer to see that, yes, we in fact do have some stormwater infrastructure in this area that's transmitting water through here, which should be a priority for going out and inspecting moving forward. Additionally, we can do the exact same analysis, but with particulates. So we have the same map here, but in fact, this is a progress map. So this is giving us an idea of the progress that we've currently made using our stormwater effort. So down here in the bottom left, we have a summary table, stormwater. The darker areas represent the percentage reduction of particulates we're removing from stormwater runoff in tons per year. And the summary table just breaks down how we're removing those particulates. We're all familiar with TMDLs here, and we know that those receiving waters that have the TMDLs can be difficult to figure out how we're going to mitigate how we're removing those TMDLs. So on the left-hand side, we can actually sort the receiving waters to figure out how much particulates we're removing, how we're removing those particulates, and then how close we are to achieving some of our goals. All this information is a result of a few different things, but one of the most critical are some of these stormwater control measures. We call them structural BMPs, but in the Southeast, the stormwater control measures across the landscape. They're intended to capture water, treat particulates, and overall make the water quality better. And 2NFORM, as you do assessments, we can categorize all of the stormwater control measures and organize them based on the water quality benefit of doing functional repairs. So this gives you a list in order of if you were to go out and do repairs, the number one thing on this list, Watsonville D18, you would get the most water quality benefit by repairing this particular asset. So with that, I'm going to hand it back over to Chris.
Yeah, thanks, Wilson. One of the very first things that people tell us is valuable about 2NFORM is its ability just to constantly be summarizing all of the program data that you're collecting across your organization. In that case, being able to fill in the storm drain information very simply from the summary that's automatically generated. Time saving is one of the things we really tried to focus on in terms of gathering and collecting information that you can authoritatively use to submit your annual report. I think the second thing, that Wilson showed was quite valuable as well, and that's the notion of quantifying your runoff reductions. We know that for most of you, that is kind of the primary objective, and that those control measures that you have in place have to be optimized in such a way to achieve that. So being able to bring those things together and see your operational layers, as well as leverage some analytics and science to give you accurate forecasts that you can rely on and use in conversations with your regulator. I think this last thing was interesting in the sense that it showed the value of analytic to help prioritize work and efforts and investments. That's one of the big things I think is that ability to use data to drive decisions that you can stand behind. There was another area we thought would be really important to share with you all, and that's this notion of leveraging science for watershed management. One of the things that we specialize at Second Nature in is exactly that, a science-based approach to stormwater management. One of the things that we're going to show you, the ability to take a baseline assessment with no infrastructure, and then add your infrastructure to that, and then look at your potential plans and how they can alleviate and help you further reduce your loading. And I think for many of you, that's probably fits in line with your reasonable assurance plan goals that you probably are setting on an annual basis with your regulator or across the term of your permit. Wilson, how about if we demonstrate that scenario planning capability?
Here we are in scenario planning. We're looking at the extent of the same MS4 boundary. And in this case, what we are looking at is the runoff at baseline scenario. And just like Chris mentioned, this is if there were no assets on the landscape capturing any water, there were no mitigation for stormwater in place. The darker areas, just like the last map, have the highest runoff values. Now we can look at the exact same map, but with our current scenario. So this is taking into account all of those structural BMPs across the landscape that are completed and what we call, existing. They are on the landscape and existing, and we can calculate reductions and show the benefit that those have. Now we can go one further and look at a future scenario if we have some designed or planned assets. And what would the benefit of those be if those were put in the ground? So by going to our potential scenario, now we're starting to see not only those planned assets on the map, but we're starting to see a reduction overall. So I'm going to turn on or turn off all of our stormwater control measures across the landscape. And I'm going to switch back to the baseline and then switch to this potential. So you can see the color change from dark, high runoff, back to light, which is reduced runoff. As we go over to our insights and trends, we have a dashboard, which is going to give summaries of these values. We have our current values. We have a count of all the current assets in the ground, as well as all of the potential assets that could be built for both centralized, those really large assets that maybe treat a 30-acre subdivision, as well as those decentralized assets. We have a capacity progress chart giving our current progress, as well as our potential progress and our goal as a municipality, just a goal that is set. We have our total runoff reduction. So the total height of this bar is going to be that baseline runoff result. The total height of the gray bar is going to be the current runoff value. So the little blue amount here is that amount of mitigation that we have in place from our current stormwater control measures. The potential bar here, we see that the black bar is a little bit lower because we have more of those potential stormwater control measures in place. And that little blue sliver is a little bit bigger because we're going to be reducing more from those potential assets being put on the ground. On the right-hand side, we have the counterpart of that graph showing how we are getting those reductions from runoff disconnection, centralized stormwater control measures, and decentralized stormwater control measures. Again, we call those structural best management practices. And then we have the particulate load reduction for the exact same graph, right? We have runoff at the top and particulate load reduction here in the bottom.
That's great, Wilson. Thank you. I think what's interesting about that is analytic at cloud scale. Many of our existing users were previously having engineering companies do project-based calculations that would end up being shelved and not be very usable in actually doing strategic planning. What you're seeing now is the ability to be able to update your plans and have the model calculate in near real time so you can immediately see the impact and weigh different scenarios of approaches of how you would invest in either renewing existing SBMPs or adding new SBMPs and green infrastructure projects to your landscape. So we showed you scenario planning. Now let's actually talk a little bit about project delivery. An ability to maintain kind of a comprehensive portfolio of all of your projects. Now, just as taxonomy, I mean, we all know that projects have different life cycles. That's simple as planning or design, construction, all the way to completed. We also know at any phase that a project can be shelved or rejected. But the point is having one system where you can now capture and maintain all of that authoritative information you've captured across the years. Why that's important is many of our existing users tell us that a plan may not have fit before, but now in the future, funding becomes available, plans change, and you're able to maybe rehash or breathe some new life into a good idea from the past.
And I think you said it perfectly, Chris, and the fact that a lot of times these projects for one reason or another might be shelved, maybe just not the right place in the right time, but keeping that information retained is important because there is a big investment put there. And so that's exactly what we're seeing here on the map. Not only can we see the different phase of these projects, but we can also see all of the different assets that are associated with these projects across the landscape, including all of those shelved or rejected assets. So we can see those potential distributions as well. Now, if we want to zoom in to a particular area, we can click on a potential project here and get some basic information about this project's design. We can click on details to get more information about this particular project. Now, this is called the fact sheet, and we get some immediate information about this project. Now, here in the spatial reference data, we get information automatically generated. So using a geospatial platform like 2NFORM, we have national data sets, regional data sets that automatically put the spatial reference data in, like slope percentage and hydrologic soil group, which immediately on a local scale help you determine the feasibility of certain projects, as well as different social scores. So that way you can take that into account as well when determining what projects to push forward. You can look at any of the different assets or contacts associated with a project, keep all the different files and plans associated with this project throughout the entire life cycle. That way, those plans are not lost over time and you can actually keep track. And then if there are any photos, you can keep those associated with the site as well. Additionally, from this page, you can always go and edit the inventory. So you can add new details as that project develops. So maybe as the project gets approved, you can always go in and maybe move this to the next phase of design, such as move that up to the construction phase, and even potentially add new engineering assets, such as a stormwater project, or retaining all the stormwater from a particular project. We have different stormwater control measure types. You can just give this a unique ID. And from here, you can enter any of the engineering details about a particular asset. From here, you just save and close, and all of that information is immediately retained to the project. We see the asset information pop up, we see the symbology change, and all of this information, if we were to go back directly to the map, is now reflected in the map view, just showing dynamic change. As new projects come across your desk, you can always add them directly into 2NFORM. So let's say we want to add another project to our park down here. We can click Add New Project. And just as easy as dropping a pen and adding a name, we can add new potential projects directly to the platform here.
That's great, Wilson. Thank you. You can start to see how those two form a virtuous cycle. Being able to have an authoritative inventory of all of your projects, to be able to manage those projects through their natural life cycle, as you saw, moving from a project design into actually figuring out which specific BMP assets you're going to be placing on the landscape, and then running that all the way through to implementation. And then in turn, feeding that into your scenario planning efforts. So at any time, you're able to assess and understand how changes on your landscape can result in less flooding, less pollution. I think the reality is, in just looking across the US and the news and what's making the attention of decision makers, is it's clear that we are probably facing a new normal now. Looking at a series of things that are working against all of us. There's obviously more severe weather that's now impacting us. We're experiencing more intense storms on a more frequent basis. We're also challenged with the infrastructure that was designed for previous estimate storm capabilities that now faces challenges in being able to keep up with the volume and intensity of the water hitting the surface. I'd say last but not least, we face an urban environment that has a lot of concrete, so we're trying to manage that. Probably like you, our sense is that by leveraging GIS tools for stormwater O&M, MS4 compliance, and applied watershed science actually would help communities like yours be able to reduce pollution, reduce flooding, and become a more resilient environment for your citizens. One of the questions that we're often asked, frankly, is how does 2NFORM fit into our existing ecosystem? If you're a small city or a small county, you probably already have ArcGIS. So the easiest answer is, well, 2NFORM naturally connects to your ArcGIS, either ArcGIS Online or ArcGIS Enterprise. It leverages all the applications available in the Esri ecosystem. And probably most importantly, it stores your spatial data inside of ArcGIS, so it is available across the ArcGIS platform. If you're a larger community, you probably have other systems already in place, including asset management, CRM systems, and so on. 2NFORM enables you to integrate those systems with 2NFORM and ArcGIS, either by sharing a common spatial data repository stored in ArcGIS, the location of all of your assets and their details. We can use REST APIs to be able to integrate work streams so that you can go back and forth between those systems more efficiently and share data. And you can actually use one application to call another application. Our vision, probably like yours, is to create an integrated solution so that stormwater management can work across departments and be part of the ecosystem of a city or a county GIS program. Wanted to keep kind of moving on because in reading your permits, and obviously across the US, while all derived from EPA standards, there are subtle differences from state to state. In this case, we chose Florida to look closely at your permit language. Let's start by looking at kind of the post-construction stormwater management and new development and redevelopment. This is an area where many of our users kind of really value the capabilities of 2NFORM. And the one I really want to focus on is being able to meet your needs to assess your SBMPs as they're in the ground to ensure they're performing optimally. Now, the first and foremost is the ability to inventory those public and private SBMPs, but also to be able to do a true assessment, removing observer bias so that regardless of who you send out into the field to take those observations, those forms in 2NFORM enable you to more accurately get an assessment that's consistent across your entire staff, something that's absolutely essential for accurate analytics and helping you manage your stormwater plan.
Thank you, Chris. So just as you mentioned, here we are on our post-construction module, and specifically we're looking at those structural BMP diagnostics. And in this case, those stormwater control measures. We're looking at a subset, so we're looking at a small area, which we have a few stormwater control measures in one place. The different pins just represent the location of these assets, and the two-letter abbreviations represent the type. We have BR for bioretention, BS for bioswale, DT for detention basins, and so on. The different colors represent the condition based on last assessment, green being good, red being poor. Just like Chris mentioned, we can do assessments in a few different ways. First, well, we can't do an assessment without actually knowing what we have in the ground. And by clicking on a particular asset, we get some basic information about where the asset is, as well as how big it is, including treatment capacity and footprint. And if we view the inventory, we can get some advanced information about this asset, including location, all the different BMP information included in the engineering plans involved with this asset, as well as drainage area, which we're starting to see across the country being very vital in reporting. Now, we can do site visits in two different ways. We all have those site visits where you have to go and do the routine visit where you're just on site and you just have to check the structural condition. Just, do you have access? Is there erosion? As well as your basic maintenance. But one thing that is completely different about 2NFORM is we have the ability to go out and do an actual assessment to test the function of the BMP. Now, what we're able to do is look at material accumulation and conveyance, In some cases, we can test infiltration to see how well the asset is doing at capturing particulates or infiltrating water. Based on the engineering principles that it's designed to do, such as infiltrate water or retain water, we can actually quantify how well it's performing compared to its engineered standards, which are stored in the asset inventory. And these are where we are getting some of those structural BMP results, which we saw earlier in our model. So this is a really good way that our current clients are going out and proving that they have a firm grasp on the health and are strategically planning how to revitalize and maintain the health of their assets over the long term, creating a 3 to 5 year strategic plan, making sure that these assets are properly maintained.
We've given a lot of thought and put a lot of energy into designing forms that make it easier, or at least streamline the process of collecting data, removing options that are superfluous and focusing on the information needed to help you comply with your permit and achieve your stormwater outcomes. The notion for me of removing the observer bias is especially important and something that our science team continues to work on refining. Pollution prevention obviously is a critical aspect, as is good housekeeping. One of the things that we have given a lot of thought to is how do we help you optimize that process of building and maintaining your O&M plans with GIS. Our strategy was to leverage Esri to enable you to have one application for your field work crews, so that they're learning one application, and gather that information using Field Map's ability to provide a customized form fit for purpose. Now, when you're back in the office, obviously, or anywhere you are, you can use your web browser to access 2NFORM to be able to see the results of those inspections and maintenance activities. And I should also say, if you're a large municipality and you already have an asset management system, this may be an area where an integration or data sharing of your spatial data becomes a key strategy for you, something we definitely support.
And what we're looking at right now is just a screen share of my phone, and we're in Field Maps looking at different outfalls. So I can zoom in, and by clicking on an outfall, we get some immediate information about the outfall itself. We get an outfall ID. We can go down and see basic information and perform a site visit. We can take photos, attach any files, and then by determining whether the asset is accessible or not, we have dynamic forms which open up different information, such as structural condition, different maintenance tasks, and sediment and trash removal activities. Just like Chris mentioned, these forms are configurable to meet your needs of your municipality. Now, this information is captured using Field Maps and is immediately available in 2NFORM. 2NFORM enables you to keep track of asset inspections as well as maintenance activities. You have the ability to filter and see exactly the information you need to do your work. So in this case, I want to see all of the catch basins across the municipality that have a trash capture device located. Zoom in a little bit more, and we can see all of the catch basins that have some form of trash capture device. If we want more detailed information about a particular asset, that detailed information is available for every asset in the system. Here, I can zoom in, click on an asset, get basic details about the asset itself, as well as view a complete history of everything ever done at this particular catch basin. We also have built-in dashboards that make it easier for you to know where you stand relative to your permit requirements. So one of our users' favorites is down at the bottom left, which is the top 5 corrective actions. This is just an example of one of the ways that 2NFORM is designed to help support your work.
I think one of the other key things that we've really tried to focus on is in using field maps is to ensure that it supports both online and offline workflows. Face it, not all of us have access to great cell coverage everywhere we are in our area of operation. So being able to leverage that capability of field maps becomes an important characteristic and one of the primary reasons why we encourage people to leverage it. I think the other thing that we have tried really hard to show is the ability to be able to just keep an overall viewpoint on all of your assets, to provide the capability to query and summarize that data. As you saw back in the very beginning, how Wilson took that summary and pasted it into the annual report. All of your information throughout any given calendar year is being collected similarly to that and being automatically summarized and analyzed. I think that's also one of the best reasons why people will leverage 2NFORM, even if they have an existing asset management system. It provides the stormwater manager and the stormwater team with that ability to roll up key information needed without having to chase around potentially to try to track down information just ahead of submitting their annual report. This is discharge and elimination. Now, I know some of you probably have forms already created with ArcGIS, and that's great. There are many ways of being able to actually log that incident originally, and we can pull those incidents in from a variety of sources. Our favorite approach is leveraging ArcGIS to identify the location and the key information. We can help the stormwater team facilitate its ongoing inspection and retain all the details so that they're available for your reporting needs, both in the current calendar year and in subsequent years as you want to compare and contrast year-over-year changes in your territory.
We're going to walk through an entire kind of adding a new incident all the way through of doing an inspection here. So what we're looking at, right, we're back at that full extent, and we're going to add a new incident for, let's say, an event on a highway. Maybe something has happened, and what we want to show is that in this case, 2NFORM is providing the capability to record the vital details. So whenever an incident is first reported, we can receive that information and log it. So what I'll do is zoom in generally to where the incident happened and click Add New Incident. Once this is opened, I can click where the incident happened, and a pin is dropped on the map. Once that pin is dropped on the map, all we have to do is give it a unique ID. The latitude and longitude, as well as the street address, city, and zip code are automatically logged. Let's say maybe the street address was incorrectly reported initially. We can actually move that pin, and all that information is going to update as the pin is moved. So we can see that that information was changed. And then here in the general information, we can log basic information about how that came in, as well as notes and any photos. Then we just hit save and close. So now a new incident has been created right where we dropped our pin. So next, we have to go out and actually do an inspection or an investigation on this new incident. And from this form, 2NFORM is going to prompt us to fill out some quintessential details of an inspection. We can gather general information, including notes and photos, attach any files such as a handout we handed out while there, record what type of incident it was, as well as how we did the inspection and cleaning of the spill. If we identified a responsible party and hit yes, a whole slew of information comes up, including any damages that were billed or enforcements that were issued. And then finally, we can always record if there's a follow-up that's needed, and the system will remind us. Or we can always close out this investigation and record the reason why we are closing this out. From here, we can hit save. And the system is either going to say an open investigation is still ongoing, or in this case, we've closed out the investigation. Now, having all this information in one place makes it easier to understand the potential threats. So if we zoom in, we can understand the local environment a little bit more. We can turn on information such as flow routing to see which direction the stormwater is going. In this case, we can see it's going toward the West Branch Struve Slough. We can turn on a storm drains layer to see that the spill occurred near a storm drain, which means that it is probably very high risk. So good thing we closed that out. So this is just an example of how having this information at your fingertips really helps save time and speeds up your workflows.
Again, what we've tried to do is just create a system where you can have that single repository where it makes it easier to do the things you need to meet the requirements of your MCMs, in this case, illicit discharge detection and elimination. We also recognize, as I said before, that incidents will typically come in from a variety of sources. And with 2NFORM, being able to use those various sources and pull them together using ArcGIS is one of the powers that we're quite proud of. I think the other thing that I've learned about this is that just having that form in a standard way makes it easier or streamlines the process of collecting the details required as you conduct your various inspections. Now, a question I should mention we get quite often is, can we customize the forms? And the simple answer is yes. We've tried to take great care to ensure that all the key data points have been captured. So there's an entire library of available attributes that you can capture, and you can elect to turn those on or off, and you can also give them your own kind of names or descriptions to make it easier for you and your staff. We know that construction site stormwater runoff control is a big thing for all of you, especially those who face quite a high level of construction or redevelopment in your jurisdictions. So being able to track each project's compliance with those MS4 requirements in your permit and the standards that you hold your contractors to is important. 2NFORM has the capabilities that if you don't have a construction management system already or active asset management system capable of doing this, 2NFORM can fill that gap. And again, if you do have those capabilities, you can also just leverage the data in those and leverage 2NFORM to be able to help summarize that content for you as you do your planning and as you do your reporting.
So again, here we are looking at construction. We'll zoom in to get the full extent of the MS4 boundary, and all of these triangles just represent different construction sites. Now, we talked about these different phases earlier because they are the same phases that we use in project delivery. So these are the different phases of the construction site. Now, based on the last inspected result, we can also view the condition of these sites, whether they were found to be satisfactory, green, unsatisfactory, red, or whether they have any enforcement actions open. We can also see which sites have an inspection due. If we want to look at one of these sites more in particular, we can zoom in and click on a site, get basic information about the particular site, or search for a site using the filter tool on the left. So in this case, if we have a particular site in mind, we can always go over and find one on the left. Now we, just like in project delivery, can view the entire inventory. So all this information is retained across the entire life cycle of the project itself, including all the general information and any assets associated with this particular project. And from here, we can also do any site visits. So a site visit in this case would just be an inspection. And from your mobile device out in the field, we have all of our general information you can collect, any site documents. So whether all of your erosion control plans are on site, all of our required observations. Now, these are not required to be done, but it is nice to have a checklist. And to do those, you would just hit start and click add observation. And then finally, the ability to schedule any follow-up inspections, add photos, collect signatures, etc. From here, you can see a history of everything done at this site, including downloading any post-inspection reports to send those off to the contractor, as well as see any notices of violation, enforcement actions, etc. We also have a fact sheet, so that way you can see all of the information about this particular project kept in one place for the entire duration of the project. Including contacts, files and plans, and all the other information. At the top, we have a to-do list, giving us a list of all the inspections that are due, all of our open enforcement, as well as all the structural stormwater control measure or BMP installation tasks that we have to go out and do our final inspection.
Hopefully what you took away from Wilson's demo is that it has quite the capabilities to be able to catalog, inventory, and report on your construction site management activities to ensure that proper stormwater runoff controls are in place and maintained throughout the construction period. I think the other thing that's really important to note is if you do use our construction capability, that data automatically flows into post-construction. So any assets that are now on those properties or part of that construction are automatically transferred and immediately available for your post-construction workflows. So it's been key to us to be able to, again, leverage ArcGIS to store information once and be able to use it across both ArcGIS and across 2NFORM's capabilities, so that you're never having to redundantly add information.
If I could, Chris, and one thing that we're hearing, especially from field inspectors, is that handoff from construction to post-construction is extremely valuable because the engineering plans stored with that asset in construction, they can pull that up in their first inspection and see the actual plans for the first inspection of those stormwater control measures in the field. And so that's just something I've heard I wanted to pitch in there. Thank you.
No, that's great, Wilson. Thank you. As you probably get a sense, with 2NFORM, we've really tried to provide capabilities for literally each section of your permit. We covered some of the basic MCMs, but I'd encourage you to visit our website and explore our product pages to get more details about the other capabilities that we have. You saw some of the strategic planning capabilities with project delivery and scenario planning. There are others, including some that may be coming to your permit soon, such as trash, and being able to understand and mitigate the impacts of trash on your landscape and on your receiving waters. I think the other thing you may find interesting on our website is some of our peer-reviewed journal articles and the blog posts from our science team that offer insight and trends related to stormwater. And last but not least, of course, is seeing how our other users leverage 2NFORM each day to support their operations. The 2NFORM team is dedicated to creating tools for modern stormwater management. Our job is to provide the tools and capabilities that help you do your job most effectively. We're scientists, software engineers, ArcGIS experts, stormwater practitioners. And we are absolutely passionate about stormwater. We have high integrity, and we have a growth mindset in relationship to constantly learning and evolving our craft so that we can be the best possible resource for you in support of your mission. So on behalf of Wilson and myself and the entire Second Nature team, we really appreciate you taking the time to be with us today.